My name is Joshua Brandon, and I will be talking about reading for meaning out of our Core 6 textbook. And before I get into everything, I want to give you a kind of guideline or blueprint to how this presentation will run in three important takeaways I want you to walk away with, along with my personal experience on how I think everything should, or how I feel about the reading for meaning chapter, as well as some ways that you can implement reading for meaning into your classroom. Once again, like I said, I was going to give you three main points I want you to walk away with. And the first point, I want you to understand the three phases that come with reading for meaning. I also want you to understand the three reasons why reading for meaning addresses to the Common Core, and then also the research behind reading for meaning. Before I get into any of that, I do want to define reading for meaning. But before I even get into that, I want to also I will add a PowerPoint slide for your reference. Now this slide will have a little bit more detail of what I'm going over. I will be giving you the meat and potatoes. The PowerPoint slide will be your sides, broccoli, asparagus, water, whatever it is that you want. But the video will be used to give you the meat and potatoes. Like I said, the slide is going to be more your sides, so to speak. More detail though. Before I get into everything, I want to define reading for meaning. Reading for meaning is a research-based strategy that helps all readers build the skills that proficient readers use to make sense of challenging text. Under reading for meaning, I want you to understand three key points that I took from that definition. First is that we need to build. Second, I feel like we need to help students make use of the challenging text. So challenging being that second main point. And lastly, understand that this is a research-based strategy. So this is research driven from students not being able to read and comprehend text effectively or at a proficient level. Like I said, one of the main points I want you to understand is the three phases of critical reading that lead to reading success. First, students should be able to preview and predict before they read. Before is the key word. Second, students should actively search for relevant info during their reading. During is the key word here. And lastly, they should be able to reflect on learning after they read. After being the key word there. Those are the three phases of critical reading that lead to reading success. Once again, previewing and predicting before reading, actively searching for relevant info during reading, and lastly, reflecting on learning after they read. So those are your three key phases of critical reading. Now, when it comes to reading for meaning in relation to the Common Core, it's really important that we understand as instructors that we need to meet students where they are, and we need to not come in with any assumptions. Okay, I will reference on that point later on, but I just want us to kind of nip that right now and let you know assumptions are not good as teachers. You understand, we have got to meet students where they are. Now, three reasons for using reading for meaning to address the Common Core. The Common Core standards for ELA and literacy call for increasing the complexity of the text that students are expected to be able to read as they progress through school. Going back to that first definition of reading for meaning, like I said, we have got to build. We've got to build on the skills that then evolve our students into proficient readers. So we have to challenge them with more complex text, but not just challenge them with complex text that they can't understand. Make sure they're able to understand and grasp the text by using the three phases of critical reading effectively. The second point the second reasoning under the reasons for reading for meaning in relation to the Common Core is evidence. Students have got to be able to define or actively find and search and support their evidence while they read. I'm going to use a definition from the book, or a quote from the book, starts on page 7, goes into page 8. Students cite specific evidence when offering an oral or written interpretation of a text. They use relevant evidence when supporting their own points in writing and speaking, making their reasoning clear to the reader or listener, and they constructively evaluate others' use of evidence. Now, evidence does not only refer or is limited to their evidence, it's also being able to constructively review their peers' evidence. I think it's key for us as teachers to make sure that our students are not only being able to find evidence that they may be answering questions, but also just challenge the author, challenge the text. I think that's very key. That's very key. That's very important. So evidence is the second reason for using reading for meaning to address the Common Core. And the last reason is the core skills of reading. Now, these core skills include identifying the main idea, making inferences, and supporting inferences with evidence. Once again, there's that evidence word. So evidence is obviously key for us to understand when it comes to reading for meaning. Evidence is always important. You have got to be able to understand your evidence, not only be able to understand your evidence, but find your evidence and also refute or defend your evidence. Now, like I said, this is a research-based practice, so it's key for us to look and focus on the research that comes behind reading for meaning. Like I said earlier, it's key for us not to assume. It's another quote from the book that I really liked on page 8. Most teachers were setting up students for failure by making the false assumption that comprehension, the very thing students were being tested on, did not need to be taught. Teachers assumed that they were getting it. We can't assume just because a student is in a 5th grade classroom that he may be able to, he or she may be able to read on a 5th grade level. And not just being able to read, but comprehend the text, break it down, understand what they're reading by doing, like I said, the 3 phases of critical reading: before, during, and after. It's key for us to not assume that they just automatically know these things. It's our job to teach them and make sure that they're able to comprehend these, their reading. Now, like I said, it's a research-based practice, and they wanted to answer the question, what do great readers do? So through research, they found that good reading is active reading. This means, like I said, excellent reading happens before reading, continues during reading, and persists after the reading. Like I said, before, during, after. Good reading is active reading. I'm actively engaged. I'm not just compliant. Number 2, comprehension involves a repertoire of skills or reading and thinking strategy. These sets of skills that include making connections to background knowledge, drawing inferences, and determining importance. Third, these comprehension skills can be taught successfully to nearly all readers, including young and emerging readers. Sometimes as instructors and even as a coach, I sometimes say, okay, this may be a little bit too hard for you. I don't want to do this to you. Sometimes I say, you know what, let's throw you in the deep end of the water. Let's see if you can swim. I'll be there to help you. I'm not just going to let you drown. But it's key for us to really make sure that we're challenging and being able to understand that every student can understand it and grasp these concepts. But we have to teach them, not just assume that they know them. This includes young and emerging readers. Going into that point, teaching students comprehension skills has a significant and lasting effect on students' understanding. Now, when it comes to students' understanding, you want to implement these readings for meaning in the classroom. Like I said, I was going to give you some ways that you can do this. Identify short text you want students to read for meaning. Identify that text. Find that text. It does not have to just be a nonfiction or a fiction book. This could be a math assignment. This could be a letter written by George W. Bush. This could be I don't know why I just used George W. Bush, but he's the first person that came to mind. This could be a tweet, an Instagram post, a PR statement, whatever it is. They should just be able to understand and identify a short text that they can read for meaning. Now, generate a short list of statements about the text. So if I'm looking at a tweet posted by United Airlines saying their bylaws or what contractually they are obligated to do or they have the right to do as an airline, we're gonna look at some important statements about that text. Okay, so United Airlines says passengers are required to blank blank blank. In the event that so and so happens, blank blank blank. We're getting a short list of statements about the text that we want to keep in our minds as we read. Introduce the topic of the text and have the students preview the statements before reading. Like I said, preview the statements before you read. Have students record evidence for and against each statement while and after they read. Have the students discuss their evidence in pairs or small groups. I think this is really important, not only just because your points might not be the best points, but 2 heads is better than 1. Bouncing off each other's ideas, including points, going into more detail on the text. It's always good to have students work in small groups or pairs. Conduct a class discussion for students to share and justify. Now, in order for us to perform this classroom discussion, it has to be an open classroom. We have to understand that your point is not right. You just got to be able to defend your point. You have to be able to provide evidence to support your point. Lastly, use response to evaluate that evaluates their understanding. Like I said, your response might not be always the right response, but it's your job to make sure students understand that they have to use evidence to evaluate what they understand. Like I said, I was going to give you some examples how you can